Do you rehearse grief slash grieving or allow yourself to be in the moment and let the sadness become real? This is a question to fellow actors. And it's going around on Facebook, and I just felt important to chime in from my perspective. And I am here to suggest that people who are experiencing real grief experience multiple health issues. Real grief can trigger and disrupt the brain gut by system. It can trigger the vagal nerve, the vagus nerve, and create all kinds of stress in the body. It affects the gut health. It can cause nausea, pain, diarrhea, and shortness of breath, and inflammation, leaky gut, and microbiome imbalance. And it can disrupt your sleep disruption. According to the Institute of Heart Math, 5 minutes in a state of this kind of triggered energy pattern can lower your immune system for over 6 hours. So, if you are an artist and you are utilizing your own personal grief as a trigger for artistic truth, you may be exposing yourself to a very dangerous process. And there is no biological need to do that, and there is no artistic need to do that. And I'm here to talk more about how you can create real experiences for the audience when you're expressing grief. So let's talk about grief as an artistic process. And we look at the art of storytelling, and we see that stories about grief have existed throughout the ages. We can look at Antigone from the Greeks and from Jean Ennui. We can look at the Orpheus and Eurydice story that maybe comes from Virgil but expresses itself in Sarah Ruhl's play. It expresses itself, it comes in Hadestown. And we can look at a contemporary play like Rabbit Hole, a play and a movie, right? And a very recent series, Paradise, where all but 25,000 people in the world have died. The act of telling stories about grief and the process of grief is ancient. And artists have been called upon to express it for over 2 millennia, right? And so it's important that we learn how to do it and to do it safely. And as I said, the process of recalling your own personal grief as an artistic approach not only has health damaging, potentially, health ramifications, it also, in that it disrupts the breath flow, it can make one incoherent. It certainly does for me. And having watched my husband die, having lost 3 siblings, having lost dear friends, having lost my parents, having lost many capabilities in my own physical body, I have experienced a great deal of personal grief. And I have rendered it on camera, and I have rendered it on stage repeatably and safely without needing to turn to my own grief. In fact, one time I decided, even though I had all these wonderful techniques where I didn't need it, I decided that I wanted, on my last performance of a play where I was supposed to be in deep grief, having been dumped by my fiance, I had to step back on stage, and after 30-second change, supposedly 6 months later, very happy, engaged with a new fiance, and I decided on this last performance to go ahead and recall my grief from my husband's death. It triggered my diaphragm, and asthma, and my tears and my nose began to water so much. My makeup went crazy, and I couldn't speak. I started choking, and I couldn't get my body to stop. And I had to go through my scene change and step back in 30 seconds, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. And that uh, is what happens to me. And so, this is one reason why I personally knew I needed to stay with the techniques that I had been trained in to overcome this situation. Now, as we are looking at grief, there's many different things to say about it. And I'll talk about some of the technical ways that you can approach grief. But it's not that simple, because there is not just one kind of grief. And we know that there's not just one stage of grief. So when we talk about expressing grief as an artist, we need to really look at the many different ways that grief expresses itself. The stories that I've mentioned earlier being told, you see that the characters are in an overall state of grief for a long time, and they need to move through the various stages. And maybe you use Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 7 stages. Maybe they're in the stage of shock. Maybe they're in the stage of anger. Maybe they're in the stage of negotiation. So there are many different phases that are all grief. So how one expresses grief is not a one-size-fits-all situation. And I will, as I said, I will in a little bit give you more information about the process of artistically creating what we generally think of as heavy, internal, deep sorrow, and the grieving, active grieving process of that initial, those early phases of the deep sort of sobbing grief. But I want to talk for a moment about the concept of the human psychology and the fact that, and we're talking a great deal about the skill sets that are offered in acting the Michael Chekhov way. So this is heavily founded in Michael Chekhov's work. And so I look at this question of the human psychology as we are humans who have thinking processes, and we have feeling processes, and we have will forces. And grief can express in all 3 of these locations. And where it's living in the physical body and how that affects the breathing pattern will shift depending on where the expression is coming from. And that may evolve in relation to the different stages of grief. Now, you can research on the internet the facts that I've stated earlier about how grief affects your health. That is readily available, not just your mental health, but your biological health. It can affect your heart. It can affect your immune system for sure. It can affect your balance. And so these are all evidences, again, of why, if you can avoid activating your own grief to achieve your artistic expression, it is going to be a healthier choice for you. Now, let's look at some of the reasons why we think we need to experience what we call real grief. So why does an artist think that we should turn to our own personal grief? Well, one is because it was thought to be, especially in the 20th century, the best way to create an authentic or real expression of grief for the artist. And so let's look at the actor's aim, the actor's primary task. is to access images, select the best of many they have, and convey them to the audience, because it only takes two things to act, an actor and the audience. And the reality is that the audience is who we do this for. So we gotta ask ourselves this basic question of I'm gonna do this thing here for you, and see if we can do it. I'm gonna get a back support, and I am gonna draw an image, and we'll see if this magic marker works. But here's my image. Okay. Now, you can ask yourself, well, within my beautiful skill of artistry, what am I drawing? Yeah. We give that. Yeah, it's a teddy bear. Now, what is the teddy bear feeling? Yeah, I mean, you can post. What is that teddy bear feeling? Do you think that teddy bear is sad? Do you think that teddy bear is feeling sad? Yeah, most people will say, that teddy bear is sad, right? Well, all right. The reality is that the teddy bear is feeling nothing. The teddy bear is feeling nothing, and the teddy bear is absolutely feeling nothing, 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 nothing. The teddy bear is the actor. Who was having the feeling on behalf of the teddy bear? You, the audience, the spectator. The artist is sacrificing and capable of sacrificing their own experience of their own pain in order to awaken, activate, and allow the audience to experience sadness in their own way. This is catharsis. Okay? Going back to the Greeks once again. Catharsis happens when the audience has the experience, not the performer. Now, maybe that upsets you that I ripped up that little teddy bear, but the thing is, you saw me make it. You knew it was just a piece of paper. That piece of paper is feeling nothing. In the same way that Nemo and Bambi and Nemo and all those little animated characters are feeling nothing. Their animation, their dots or ink on paper or celluloid or whatever it is, but it's not a human soul having an experience. We would not have teddy bears if the piece of foam and fake fur and whatever it is that makes it up had to have the feelings inside of it. Art, paintings are not feeling. Sculptures, the winged victory of Samothrace is stone. The Pietà is stone. Who has the experience? Do you think that the artist was experiencing the grief of Mary holding her child, her son, the whole time that he was carving the Pietà? No, nor were the animators the whole time they were animating Bambi or Nemo. No. And the film, when it's playing up on the screen, or the TV show, or the play itself, the story itself is not having the feeling. It is the spectator, the audience, who must experience a feeling within themselves. This is why they pay us the big bucks. This is why they'll pay $1,500 to go to a show on Broadway, because they want to walk out of the show changed from how they walked in. And they want to be changed in thought, to be changed in feeling, and to be able to do something different in their life, to be changed in their will in some way, to have themselves freed from something, and through the catharsis, through the sheer entertainment and silliness, whatever the style or form or genre may be, audiences yearn to experience them. They have and they will since the creation of humanity. They will continue to want to have an entertainer lead them, model for them, or create an experience for them so that they can have an emotional experience. So I hope that you understand this and understand it is not your obligation to really feel anything any more than a great work of art feels, any more than something animated feels or a stuffed animal feels. Now that may make you sad as an actor because, oh, we love to have these feelings. Oh yeah, baby. But I suggest what we actually love is the expression, the creative expression. Every character we play can express its grief in a unique way, the same as it can express its grief through its joy in a new and different way. Every character can have its own laugh and its own cry, unique from the artist expressing it. And we see some actors who are very successful because they have emotional availability and we're engaged by them, and they may or may not be using the pathways that I'm suggesting. They may be using the pathways that I'm discouraging. But what they do is in every single role they play, though they can laugh and cry on cue and do the variations of grief and joy, it is the same, exactly the same way. And they could learn to express and expand their repertoire of castability, I would say, by doing so. And you will see a whole other set of actors that transform who they are every single time. They're just new people, and they laugh a little differently, and they cry, and they express and cover and limit their grief. Every human being wears what we call a mask, and we do not reveal to our children what we reveal to our lover, what we reveal to our boss. We do not reveal to our friends. We relate with everybody a little bit differently, depending on who they are to us, how old they are, and how intimate we are with them. And this is correct. This is not schizophrenic or multiple personality disorder problems. It is a way of expressing and maintaining social communications. All people do this unless there is a dysfunction in their psychological operating system. And so our characters, if, as Mr. Chekhov suggests, our characters are independently existing beings, and the story is an independently existing being, and the production is an independently existing being, and we want to create and align and receive and express this being, which is a part of our highest self. This part of our highest self is able to express any part of anything that comes into your imagination. You can express if you're trained, if you're skilled. This is where the Michael Chekhov technique, the basic psychophysical exercises, which are behind these books here on this chart, train you to express anything. And then a technique such as the three sister sensations, such as qualities and sensations and atmospheres, become those three tools become the essential key to building your skills that express your talent. So your talent is your ability to, it is what's living in your creative world, in your unlimited imagination. Your talent goes so far beyond your biography, beyond what you personally remember or can remember of your life, that it way multiplies, way surpasses what you have in your creative imagination from which to draw upon to create multidimensional expressions of grief that we're talking about specifically here, or any emotion, right? It's unlimited. Your past expressions of grief, how you grieved when, and how you express that when, is literally maybe 5% of your expressive potential. And the average human being utilizes 5 to 8% of their possible expression in everyday life. You're utilizing of your highest and unlimited self about 5 to 8% of your possibilities. Or at least Einstein thought he was at 8%, right? So I don't know where you think you fall, but hey, let's say you're at 10. You still got 10 times more imagination than you have memory. But really, when you think about this higher self, which Chekhov refers to as your ideal higher self, this and we think of your creative individuality, your creative individuality is so vast and unlimited. It has more creativity and intelligence in it than any AI platform ever will on this planet. Ever. Ever. And you source that. You can go into your own artistic creativity, right? Your own creative artistic individuality, not artificial intelligence, but artistic individuality. Make that your AI and draw upon that as your source of creativity. Cultivate and practice accessing images. You have the possibility of imagining your character exists in this sphere of creativity, and you can download it and imagine that you can watch it on a screen in your imagination or feel it as if you were wired up for a green screen expression, right? Like you can watch, sense, see, feel, taste the image of the character and have it show you how it expresses its grief. Where does it mask it and hide it inside? Where does it creep out when it encounters a child or a lover? How does that grief express when this person is in relation to their boss? Oh, I just watched this TV show. It's all her fault, and I'm watching loads of grief being explored and expressed, like loads of grief, and the multiple layers and the characters that have to interact with people of different relationships, with the child, with the parent, with peers, with siblings, right? And if you have only one expression of grief, the way you always express grief, your creativity is going to be really limited. You can, through this technique of imagination, study how your character moves through their thinking forces, through their feeling forces, through their will forces. You can ask, what is their breathing pattern with this person, that person, this person? You can ask, how do they walk? What is the tempo and the rhythm of the movement? What we're talking about here is Chekhov's qualities and sensations. you can invite yourself to look at your hand, and you can do this right now. Look at your hand and imagine that it, you can move your fingers with a quality of grief, as if almost you're operating them separately. You're just asking them to move with a quality of grief. And as they touch each other, or as they reach to touch something, that streams of grief flow through the hand and stream up into the throat, into the gut. And as they move into the gut, they move into the foot. And you can imagine that that stream of grief is moving through the arch of the foot, the palm of the hand, that middle finger, and streaming through the breath, which exhales the long, long breath down into the gut. And he starts to need to inhale, but it gets choked in the throat. And you can keep imagining then that an atmosphere of this grief descends and weighs down upon you. And you can imagine that your heart is falling. And as it falls through, it goes through a bottomless, endless well of grief. And you can do this purely through your imagination. And I want you to trust me on this. Please, please trust me on this. Okay? Because your life does depend upon it. Your creative world depends upon it. Your ability to convey grief to your audience and awaken and allow them to experience their own grief must happen through what we call artistic freedom. When you engage these techniques, the three sister sensations, falling, balancing, floating, qualities and sensations, moving as if the quality is expressible in every part of your body, and engaging the atmosphere, which contains the soul and the vibration of the space. These three team up to make an incredible power source, which you can turn on and off anytime you want. Take after take, performance after performance. And they can be individuated to the characterization. Once you know how to express them and have practiced and trained yourself to be able to express the basic qualities and movement patterns that are naturally and natively present and universally present, I've gotten to teach across the world and work with people from many, many different cultures. And these are universal patterns of the human being. Go observe them. And now I want to talk about what happens in your neurolinguistic energy field, in your aura and your energy field, when you go into a state of recall. If you try to remember, and just try this right now, okay? Try to remember what you were wearing 5 days ago, okay? 5 days ago, just take a moment. 5 days ago, it's today, what is today? What is it? Yeah, 5 days ago, what did, right? When you try to recall something, where does your energy go? The moment I ask you to recall, you disengage from the present moment. And most of the time, our energy goes into the back space. Where is your audience? First of all, actors got to be in the moment. You have to be in the moment. If you want truth, Authenticity, you're going to be in the moment. When you move that hand with a quality of grief, it is only moving now with this moment's grief. And the moment you sync that up with your image of the character and the circumstances of the character, imagining the atmosphere the character is in, imagining the qualities and sensations and situation of the character, it will particularize it. Your creative individuality will make it specific to this story, but it's based and coming from universal energy patterns that are present, always present, and allow you to be in the moment. Take after take, a little bit different each time, night after night, performance, rehearsal after rehearsal, whatever it is. Yeah, yeah. And when you're trying to recall your own personal pain, it is so colored, it's lacking universality. You're pulling yourself away from the audience and disengaging from them and from the moment and from the images living in the artistic world. This will allow you to experience your pain. But I don't know about you, but I am sure, especially if you've been in an acting class where people are working on personal affective memory recall, that you have sat there and watched them with your arms folded, with your head tilted to the right, perhaps appreciating what a good job they're doing to allow their memory to affect them, what a good job their concentration is, that kind of thing. And as they cry, they're in their grief, you're like, yeah, they're doing it. You're assessing. You, as the spectator, are in a state of assessment of their job, of what they're doing. Wouldn't you like your audience to be so caught in the world of the story that they may even leave the story and go into their own world? I did a solo show where I had to perform time after time, watching my husband go off a cliff on his motorcycle in front of me. I following him on my motorcycle. I watched him disappear. I had to do this. I chose to do this. Performance after performance. Now, if you think I could have accomplished that by recalling the actual event, no, not an option. Not an option. No. To be able to do that and sacrifice my own re-experiencing of that moment, I needed to turn to artistic approaches. One day after a show, I greeted people that were waiting for me, and an older man was there, and I greeted him, acknowledged his appreciation of the show, asked my friends and colleagues to sort of wait because we were going to hang out afterwards, and everybody left, and so I felt it was time to go ahead and greet my friends who were waiting patiently. And as I did so, I noticed this gentleman had not left. He, I realized, had more to share with me. I asked my friends who got the message, and I went back to him. He told me he too had lost his wife, and he too experienced a great deal of grief, etc. Now, he needed to share his experience with me. By me utilizing universal skill sets to express a very real horror, grief for me, he was able to have a catharsis by sharing with me that he went into his own story during my story. And he needed to tell me that to complete his experience, and I needed to receive it. So this is the kind of gift that you can give if you trust that it is our job as the artistic expressor to allow our spectator, our audience, to have the expression permeate and awaken in them their transformation. It is 100% unnecessary for any artist to operate out of their own personal feelings and own personal memory. Stanislavski, I have a book. I have a book called Murder of Talent, and it outlines this process. It's got the teddy bear in there and everything. It goes into great detail about some of the processes, and one of these images is here. This idea, and this was an argument that Stanislavski and Chekhov had. Now, they agreed on a lot of stuff, especially the Stanislavski system of analysis and the power of atmosphere, and most essentially, that theater is a spiritual art. They were in absolute agreement and integrity about that. The difference is Michael Chekhov embraced the higher self, and that higher self is able to take an objective point of view. In this example, we have here Stanislavski's point of view, where Stanislavski was saying that if the actor wants to feel the grief of a parent with a dying child, that the actor needs to imagine, and it's imagination, right? That the actor needs to imagine holding the child and looking at the child as if the actor is the parent. What would the actor do if the actor had a dying child? So we're still working in the imagination, except for those who actually have had a dying child. That's important for you to know. It's the point of view of the imagination that from Stanislavski, he says, you're the parent looking at the dying child. This should awaken in you the experience of the grief of the parent. Michael Chekhov says, but wait, what if you're the camera artistically and you take an objective perspective and you look at the image of the character holding the child, right? Now you as the actor, you're the camera lens, you're studying what this character is doing and how they're breathing and how they're speaking when they're holding the dying child. You see the psychophysical and energetic expression of the character's grief. And when you create that and align your imagination with the given circumstances, you awaken an expression of a parent holding their dying child. If we had 10 parents in the room holding their dying child, we would have 10 different breathing patterns, 10 different thoughts going through, 10 different emotional states being expressed, all internally driven from the same archetypal grief. Through the archetype of grief, we would have the individual expression 10 times. None of them would be identical. Even if it were a pair of identical twins holding their babies, they might look the same. They might sound the same vocal tone, but they would be doing something different from each other because they're unique spirits, each expressing through the mask of the character its own way. One of the problems Michael Chekhov specifically speaks of in a series of audio tapes that he has called On Theater and the Art of Acting is that the memories change. And we know that this concept of transactional analysis, going back to psychology for a moment, if we have grief, we might go seek help. And we seek help in order to manage the grief. We could say that grief is perhaps not ever going away. But our momentary experience may be as deep now as if the events just happened. But it's as if our self is able to expand and become a larger container for experiences. More and more experiences, more and more love can come into us. We can open ourselves to be able to cope with and manage and experience other things so that we are not fully focused on and overwhelmed by the state. So the depth and intensity of the grief may never change, but the frequency of paralysis, of nausea, of pain, of fractured immune systems may decrease. Okay? And if we are blocking ourselves from experiencing our personal grief, we add a whole other layer of potentially damaging health situations if we're stressed about feeling sad. So if we're able to apply Michael Chekhov's 4 Brothers of Art, as indicated here, we are then able to observe, oh, I'm experiencing a grief. I can allow this to pass through me and move on. And this is important to know because as you do these techniques, these objective universal techniques, images of your personal grief may enter. This is not a problem. You say, oh, yes, there that is. I get that. All right? And you let it, you accept it, and you allow it, and you don't judge it. You don't make yourself wrong for having moments of your own life come in while you're working and expressing as an actor. Okay? So you don't complicate the experience. But when you move and use the skill sets of Chekhov to create the expression of grief in the now moment, you are doing so because you love. You love the audience. You love acting. You love the art of performing. Maybe you're an opera singer and you have to sing these moments of grief. You know, as an opera singer, if you go into your own grief, you can't sing. I mean, your singing is going to be horrendously interfered with. Yeah. So, I mean, you ever go to a funeral in your life and you try to sing a song with whatever, yeah, it's not easy. So, it's important that you understand when you produce these conditions and states and expressions in the present moment with the artistic process, you are expressing through love because you love. You are making a loving sacrifice of your own, and you're protecting your own personal griefs. And you're going to work with those as a human being in a separate environment. Guys, I gotta say, it is so freaking selfish for actors to think they have the right to go on stage and process their own shit. And maybe that's not a nice thing to say, but I am here to say it. Don't do that. Don't do that to your audiences. Don't do it to yourself. Your psychological, emotional grief is precious. It is a living process that is developing you and your humanity. When you go to a counselor and you speak through your pain, your grief, your memories, you go with the intention of healing, to heal, to enhance your capacity to love, to have empathy, to live, which is, of course, what your loved ones would want. And you are, when you go for therapy, for help, for counseling, for group support, you are going with the intention of supporting others in healing and supporting yourself in healing. Those people who are leading you through your grief process have the pure intent of helping you relieve the negative things that are happening because of your grief. When an actor walks into an acting class and intentionally recalls their personal grief in order to do what they're supposed to be doing because somebody said that this technique would work for them, they are doing so under the pressure of a public environment, bringing out their personal pain in a public environment under the pressure of failing at the one thing they love the most. You love this art, and you go through huge sacrifices. No matter how successful you are going through huge sacrifices in your life to have the opportunity to express your creative, transformational vision, idea, gift, your talent is your love. And where did it come from? You came into this world with it. I promise you. No fairy came and tapped you on the wand when you were 4 or 6 or 26 and said, suddenly now, oh, I'm going to have you fall in love with this ridiculous, preposterous thing of play acting. Nobody did that. I think you chose it. I think you chose it before you came into this body, and you found the mommy and the daddy that was going to give you the genetics and the environment to be able to go through the processes you needed to go through in this life to express your creative individuality through this process. And in doing so, serve humanity by providing them joy, laughter, catharsis, the thing that started in the caves and will go on whether we have an internet or electricity or light of any form. This profession will go on because it's founded in love, and your love is what is bringing the true transformation. So when you go into a classroom and you recall your personal pain, it's most of the time out of fear of failure. And if your personal pain does produce the effect that you want, that is approved of by your teacher or by the audience or by your peers, your subconscious self thinks, oh, thank God I've got pain. Thank God I've got grief. And thank God I could use my grief to make me approved of. Don't do that. Yeah. Your grief is being abused when you do that. And your self-conscious will drive you to experience more grief if you don't have grief to draw upon. And in transactional analysis, we go into our grief and we examine it, we recall it. And every time we recall any memory, when it goes back into our subconscious, it has been altered and mixed by the present circumstances under which we recalled it. Your grief changes. Your memory changes. It is not fixed. And we know this. We know people's memory alters. You ever been with a friend for a long time and you talk about an event that happened 20 years ago and you two remember it very differently? You hang out with siblings, start talking about an event, you saw it differently, you remember it differently. And if you watch yourself tell a story on an old video that you told 20 years ago and you compare it with how you tell that same story today, you'll notice there are differences because the memory morphs. If you bring a memory out in order to make a point to a person, it is told differently than if you are bringing a memory out in order to re-experience it. Right? I told you a very painful story because I was making a point to you. That changed how I tell the story. Okay? If someone wants to know what I experienced, that story is told very differently. Okay? Every time it's told, it changes. So you may have a very effective moment doing it one time. And then you go back to do it again using that memory and you're dry. It just doesn't stimulate you. And now you're confused and now you're angry and now your memory is, now you're judging your memory. And the memory now goes back in with a sense of failure. Your own pain wasn't good enough to do the job. Dangerous, dangerous. In the artistic world, the name of my book, Murder of Talent, is a Stanislavski quote. He wrote this in a diary, in a journal, private journal, that he was afraid his technique would become the murder of talent. And you hear these ideas that, and it has, unfortunately. People have thought that they have to have the pains and the horrors that the character has in order to be able to act them. No, we know that that's not necessary. We just know that's not necessary. And also it's a great, huge fallacy that he ever suggested we needed to stay in character in between rehearsals or takes. He did not ever. That is not a Stanislavski method at all. So people who think they're honoring Stanislavski by staying in character for days and months in these grievous states are doing huge disservice to Stanislavski's system, to all actors everywhere, and to themselves and their health and their families. Hugely. There is no need to be able to stay in a mood during lunch while you're in the makeup or whatever. You don't need to do that. There is nothing biological that says it takes time to shift into grief. It's instant. Instant. You walk down the street, you're perfectly fine, and you lock onto an image and bang, it's gone, it's done. You're crying. It happens. You know this is true. So the idea that it's going to take a long time for you to activate these emotions is false. It's just biologically false. You look at a child, an infant. How fast do they change emotions? Hugely fast, instantaneously. Okay? So you can learn to step in and step out through these techniques that I've talked about. And that's what a professional needs to do. And that's what an amateur can learn to do. I know I've gone on a long, long time, and I hope you can see I'm really passionate about this question. It is essential that you learn, if you're going to be called upon to perform grievous states, you learn these central thoughts. Again, everyone expresses their grief differently. There are different stages of grief that every character will go through, whether they're seen in the story that's told or not. You need to know what stage and where your character is. Each person that they're around, each situation they're around will change the way the grief is expressed. Expressing it through your own recall is a huge limitation, biologically, emotionally, physically dangerous. Check the Institute of Heart Math, heartmath.org. Go see them. Remember, if you go into these actual states of recalling your own grief, you have the potential of triggering your and damaging your gut brain relationship, your vagus nerve, your gut health, inflammation, diarrhea, nausea, microbiome imbalance, sleep disruption, stress disorders. Huge amounts of cortisol start pumping through you. So you don't need to do that. The expression of grief as an artistic task is eons old and will be called upon, some people more so than others based on your typing. So if you are one of those people who's constantly cast this as someone who goes into grief, young women are frequently cast, they lose boyfriends and they lose husbands and they lose babies, and they're frequently cast in having to cry. And it is completely trainable. And by the way, talking about if you're on camera, did you ever watch an actor who's crying and then they cut to another take, and you don't see or they're supposed to be crying, they sound like they're crying, and yet you can't see the tear, and then they cut to another take and you see the stream of the tear, right? That was probably a natural tear, and the lighting doesn't pick up a natural tear as clearly as a glycerin tear. How about that, my friends? Oh yeah, I found out that one the hard way, because where I did a scene, this beautiful moment, finale of the film I was in, and the sun was setting, and I had to cry take after take after take for about 10 minutes to the sunset. It was really carefully timed. I had to wait exactly that moment, and everyone was so impressed with my ability to cry on cue and take after take after take. And the whole crew, when the sun went down and we wrapped that day, they all applauded, and it was like a big ego trip for me. Oh yay, that was so cool. Yeah, yay me. And when I went to the screening and I saw it, you couldn't see a single tear, even in the close-ups. you could you could hear it in the quality of the voice, you can sense it in the radiation, but the physical expression of the tear, they were nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be seen. So yeah, it was a nice ego moment, but I had declined the makeup artist's suggestion that they give me an artificial tear. Yeah. So I played my ego over what might have been a wiser choice to affect and impact the audience. I'm hoping you guys learn from the choices that I made and the way that I've learned and worked my process through this. So every character will express differently. You don't need to use your personal pain at all. There are healthy techniques, and I just want to thank our people who brought this forward, and I'm gonna sign off with joy.